IDF Chief Herzi Halevi and the head of the U.S. Central Command, General Mike Kurilla, met in the IDF Northern Headquarters. The military leaders discussed strategy with the chances of all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah hanging in the balance. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
While in the Underground Operations Center in the Northern Command and joined by the head of the Northern Command, Ori Gordon, IDF Chief Halevi consulted with General Kurilla on Israel's operational plans for dealing with the Hezbollah attacks in the north. The meeting took place after a residential building in Nahariya was hit by a Hezbollah UAV, causing damage but no injuries. It also comes after 340 days of cross-border fighting. Most northern residents remain evacuated, and even non-evacuated civilian cities are being targeted by Hezbollah attacks. Israeli political leaders have been indicating that the IDF focus will soon shift from the war in Gaza to the potential war in Lebanon. General Halevi told General Kurilla that the IDF awaits orders from the political echelon. In Nahariya, residents were demanding action.
אני במקור משלומי, אני מפונה כבר כמעט שנה. פוניתי לכאן כי זה מרכז החיים שלנו, ומסתבר שבאף מקום כבר לא בטוח. ואני פונה באמת לראש הממשלה ולכל חברי הקבינט, תגנו על הצפון, תעשו כבר משהו כדי שנוכל לחיות פה בשלווה. כי אם היה נופל טיל בתל אביב, אז עכשיו כבר היו סוגרים את כל העסקים וסוגרים רחובות ומשביתים מדינה שלמה ונכנסים למצב חירום. תגנו על הצפון, אין לנו בית אחר.
Israel has been hitting Hezbollah hard, but cross-border strikes alone cannot prevent rocket fire from South Lebanon. In recent hours, Air Force jets attacked a number of military buildings and an observation post used by the terror organization in the area of Kafr Kila in South Lebanon. The Mountain Brigade identified an observation post of the terrorists in the village of Shuba in South Lebanon. The post was then attacked by a tank. During the day, 3 aerial targets fell in the area of Shlomi. 2 IDF soldiers were lightly injured. Yet another day of war in northern Israel.
And joining us now with more on the security situation on Israel's northern border is Brigadier General in the Reserves Amir Avivi, founder and CEO of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Amir, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So the IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi and the head of U.S. Central Command met on the northern border for consultations. On top of that, we're hearing stronger rhetoric from Israel's political leaders that the IDF will soon shift its focus to Hezbollah. I mean, what is your assessment of these moves and these statements?
So we have to remember that on the 7th of October, 10 months ago, Israel decided to be on the offensive in Gaza and on the defense on all other fronts. We needed to focus on Gaza because, among other things, because of lack of munitions, divisions that were closed throughout the years and less forces. After 10 months, we reached a point that for the first time we can change the strategy and move the center of gravity from the south to the north. It doesn't mean that in Gaza we will not continue to be on the offensive, but it does mean that we achieve the level of readiness, and the achievements in Gaza enable us to really shift the center of attention to the north and go into a full-scale war in the north in order to create the terms for returning our 60,000 displaced citizens back safely home.
So that's what you think is going to happen in the very near future? We're going to full-out war with Lebanon, with Hezbollah?
I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm sure it needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And this is the right timing to do it. I don't think we can wait anymore. I think it's time to be proactive on the north. And we have to take in account if we won't be proactive, then our enemies will be proactive. And we cannot afford another 7th of October. Mm-hmm. We cannot afford being surprised again. We have to take in account that our enemies are also planning plans and might surprise us. We need to be proactive. We need to attack. And I think there is an understanding, both on the political level and the military, that in order to be able to bring back safely our citizens to the north, we need to push Hezbollah out of South Lebanon. I don't see any realistic scenario where this will happen diplomatically. I think there is no international pressure that is really dealing with threatening Hezbollah or Iran in order to push Hezbollah out of South Lebanon, and therefore the only real option we have is war.
Mm-hmm. And I want to also ask about Gaza, because, you know, the implication in these statements is that the war is winding down in the Strip, or will wind down in the Strip. I mean, is this your understanding? Will Israel need to first end the war in Gaza in order to deal with the northern front? Or is it capable of engaging both Hezbollah and continuing the war against Hamas?
The war against Hamas will continue for years. I mean, in Operation Defensive Shield, it took us a month and a half to regain control of the cities in Judah and Samaria and the West Bank, but it took us 5 years to stabilize the situation. Dealing with Hamas will take time. And yes, we can continue dealing with Hamas with less forces. It will take more time. And shift most of our units north and deal with Hezbollah, a war that will probably be much, much more intensive, but I think also shorter, because both sides, eventually, the prices will be such that both sides will want to end this pretty fast.
And I mean, you've said, how can Israel dismantle Hamas but keep Hezbollah on its northern border, even if it's pushed back past the Litani? I mean, will we see the north potentially becoming what Gaza has been the past 20 years? I mean, won't Israel at some point have truly no choice but to enter Lebanon, to dismantle Hezbollah just as it's doing now in Gaza with Hamas?
So I think we will definitely need a ground incursion in South Lebanon. We'll have to dismantle all the infrastructure Hezbollah has built in South Lebanon. We'll probably have to stay there for a very long time. I don't see any solution at the moment, at present, that will enable us to go out and keep this area as a buffer zone without Hezbollah going back and building the infrastructure again. And we cannot put the citizens of the north in the same danger that the citizens of the south have experienced prior and on the 7th of October. So I think that one of the terms needed to bring back our citizens north is that when they arrive to their towns and cities, when they look north, they need to see the IDF, certainly not Hezbollah. But this will not be enough. We have to hit all Hezbollah capabilities. We cannot eradicate Hezbollah the way we want to eradicate Hamas. Lebanon is much bigger. Hezbollah can withdraw all the way to Beirut and beyond. They can even withdraw into Syria. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that eradicating Hezbollah is an achievable goal, but definitely hitting them hard, setting them back many years, this is something achievable.
Hitting them hard and restoring deterrence. Amir Avivi, thank you so much for your analysis today.
My pleasure.
And day 340 of the war in Gaza, the Air Force struck a gathering of Hamas terrorists attempting to operate in a designated humanitarian area in Khan Yunis. All the details from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The identities of the numerous Hamas terrorists killed in Khan Yunis have yet to be revealed, but they are known to have carried out attacks on Israel and include a number of wanted gunmen. Hamas claimed at least 14 Palestinians were killed in the airstrike. The terrorists were operating out of a humanitarian tent encampment, using civilians seeking shelter from the war for protection. Precise weapons were used, and caution was taken to avoid civilian casualties. Elsewhere, the fighters of the Jerusalem Brigade are operating in the Zaytun area of central Gaza. The forces raided targets where terrorists were entrenched, eliminating dozens of terrorists and destroying terror infrastructure. The ground operation in Zaytun located and destroyed a machine used for the production of explosives. The terror tunnel was discovered and destroyed, along with other terror infrastructure. And in an unusual incident, an ATV attempted to ram IDF soldiers on the Egypt-Israel border. IDF troops fired at the suspicious vehicle, and one soldier was lightly injured. The vehicle fled the scene after the soldiers opened fire.
And European Union Chief Josep Borrell said the EU is ready to assist in reopening the Rafah crossing. While visiting Egypt, he also called to impose sanctions on 2 Israeli government ministers. ILTV's Deva Klein has the report.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said on Monday that the European Union is ready to leverage its logistics to assist in the reopening of the Rafah border crossing in the south of Gaza.
The European Union is ready to present their capacities, to offer their logistic capacities in order to reopen this border and the humanitarian support to come into and the people going in and out, in particular the people in need.
Borrell made these statements during a visit to the Egyptian side of Rafah, where he toured border operations guided by the Egyptian Red Crescent. During his visit, he also met in Cairo with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The status of the Rafah crossing has become a point of contention between Egypt and Israel. After October 7th, Egypt sealed the crossing and refused to allow Gazan civilians to exit Gaza, though did allow for humanitarian aid to enter the Strip. Israel took control of the Rafah border crossing in May as part of its operations in southern Gaza. Since then, it has found dozens of terror tunnels used by Hamas for smuggling in weapons from the Egyptian side of the border underneath the Rafah crossing and all along the strategic Philadelphia corridor.
And with hostage deal for ceasefire talks ongoing, with seemingly little progress being made, optimism that a deal will be reached is diminishing. ILTV's Ariella Lechiani is at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv now with more details. Ariella, thanks for joining us. What is the status of the hostages talks? They seem to once again have stalled.
Yes, thank you, Nadal. So hostage talks have yet again been stalled, unfortunately, but also very unsurprisingly, as we have seen time and time again since the beginning of the war. And the harsh and very sad reality is that as time goes on and we have not yet reached a deal, the chances of reaching a deal are becoming less and less likely, and as officials have actually stated, are currently close to zero. So pessimism is growing very rapidly and widely. However, what we are seeing now, which we have not really yet seen, is finally some acknowledgement and recognition that the reason we have not yet reached a deal is not down to Israel. And though Israel could have done things differently along the way, the pressure and focus must be on Hamas at this point in time.
Now, Hamas has reportedly introduced new demands. What are these demands, and would Israel be willing to accept them?
Yeah, so Hamas has made some new demands, which have included increasing the number of Palestinian prisoners released by Israel in exchange for some of the Israeli hostages still held in Gaza. Now, the demands that we are seeing proposed by Hamas are highly unreasonable and extremely difficult for Israel to agree to, which prompts the question, is Hamas even ready to reach a deal at this point in time, as they're expecting things of Israel which they are aware are nearly impossible for Israel to agree to. We've seen lots of international pressure on Israel, especially in regards to the Philadelphia corridor, which is not even mentioned in the most recent proposal. So yes, though Israel is adjusting their requirements and their demands, Hamas is not doing the same. And so it can't really be expected of Israel at this point in time to agree to those demands when we are not seeing any, compromise along the way.
Well, let's hope some progress is made and the hostages can finally return home. Thank you, Ariella. And more gruesome details revealed about the death of another Israeli hostage, 34-year-old Yagev Buchstav, whose mother revealed on Monday that her son, whose body was recovered by the IDF last month, was executed by Hamas. The details in the following report. The mother of slain hostage Yagev Buchstav, whose body was recovered from Gaza last month, has revealed that her son was executed by Hamas. Estelle Buchstav told the Knesset committee on Monday that an autopsy report revealed her son had been murdered by Hamas, reportedly as the IDF was closing in on his location. In her testimony, she said, "My son was kidnapped alive. There was a sign of life from him. He should have returned alive. He returned dead, murdered." She said the autopsy report detailed an execution-style murder just like the 6 hostages, including Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Polin, whose bodies were uncovered earlier this month from a tunnel in Rafah. Yagev Buchstav was abducted along with his wife Limon from Kibbutz Nirim on October 7th. Limon was released from captivity as part of the first hostages deal in November and famously defied the terrorists, refusing to smile and wave as instructed, opting instead to give them a piercing stare. Yagev's death was officially announced in July, though he is believed to have been murdered sometime in February. His body was recovered in August along with 5 other hostages. Estelle added her view that military pressure does not bring back hostages alive, it kills them, she said. Earlier this month, Hamas's spokesman announced the terror group had amended its policies, instructing its men to murder any hostages should the IDF close in on their location. For Israelis living in the north, life remains on hold. Over the past year, relentless rocket attacks have ravaged communities, leaving homes in border communities like Metula severely damaged or destroyed. And despite the lack of widespread media attention, Jewish National Fund USA has been on the ground since day one, not just helping to rebuild, but also developing an ambitious plan to reimagine the entire region's future. Joining me now in the studio is Chicago-based philanthropist and Jewish National Fund USA National Board member Deb Zaluda, who has been working closely with northern communities to assess their immediate needs and envision a path forward. Deb, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to sort of take a step back before the events of October 7th. You know, Jewish National Fund USA was already deeply involved in developing Israel's north. Can you share with us maybe some of the key initiatives that were underway?
So in continuing today, but before October 7th, we were doing a lot of work in all over the north, in the Western Galilee and the Upper Eastern Galilee. In the Upper Eastern Galilee, we were building the Galilee Culinary Institute, designed to be a world-class culinary institute, bringing people from all over the world to learn all elements of the culinary arts. We were building a medical center in Kiryat Shmona because there was a lack of services in that area. We were working in the startup arena and working with Margalit Startup City in bringing young, fresh startups, mostly in agritourism, agri-tech, food tech, to the center there. In the Western Galilee, we were working with Western Galilee Now, which is a small NGO which has grown substantially since they started working with us in JNF. And they work with entrepreneurs mostly in the area of tourism in the Western Galilee. And we also work with the Louder Employment Center, which operates both in the north and in the south, but in the north, seeking to develop employment opportunities, because one of the biggest barriers to entry is lack of employment. And the goal for JNF is to ultimately grow the population of the north significantly. And through all of those initiatives, we are hoping that the population will grow.
So a lot of initiatives pre-October 7th. And, you know, I understand that now the Jewish National Fund USA has recently launched a new initiative called Reimagine. So could you maybe walk us through the vision behind this plan and what it aims to achieve now for Israel's north?
So some of the goals remain the same. And the goals of bringing population to the north remains the same. Doing that through economic development, that remains the same. But the problem, of course, is what's happening in the north. And since basically October 7th, October 8th, when Hezbollah started playing their games with us, 100,000 people have been displaced from their homes. And it's tragic. And we don't really know when those people will come back. I don't want to say if, I want to say when. And I just read an article yesterday in Ynet. I was fumbling through in the Hebrew. And it was focused on 9 high school age students. And it was talking about their hardships. And one young lady dropped out of school, and someone else, you know, has to go to school not where they are from. They live in Kiryat Shmona. They were evacuated from their home. And they all talked about the difficulties, and their parents aren't working, and maybe, you know, a parent is no longer in the house because of the difficulties. But they all said they want to go back. And so that's the starting point. The starting point is that there's still a large number of people that want to go back. And so at JNF, we thought to ourselves, well, how are we going to get those people back? And we started assessing what was the life like before October 7th, and how have things changed. And when we looked at what life was like before October 7th, we realized that there were a lot of communities, and they all live in silos. They work in silos, and they don't talk to each other. So one of the things that we've done successfully in the South, and now we're bringing to the North, is to say, you know what? We can't operate that way anymore. We have to bring people together. We need to understand what the needs are, not of the individual communities. Yes, we need to know what the needs of the individual communities are, but we also need to know how each of those communities can leverage one another. And it's that idea of leverage. In the plan, we talk about a hub and spoke system. I kind of look at it as just how these communities can work together and really understand what each of them needs and then leverage one another.
And you know, JNF USA is also known for connecting people to Israel. And you know, you've already brought, I think, nearly 4,000 people on volunteer missions. And I understand that you're also hosting a major event now in the U.S. in November, a global conference for Israel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So our conference in Dallas, November 14th to 17th, of which I'm one of the national co-chairs, we are looking to bring close to 2,000 people together. And not just 2,000 people, but 2,000 committed Zionists. And in this day and age, to have that many people in the space together cannot be more important, especially what's happening in America with anti-Semitism. So bringing people together that are all focused on a love of Israel is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Well, Deb, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and for your important work in Israel's north.
Thank you.
And moving on, a new poll reveals Jewish voters overwhelmingly support Vice President Kamala Harris over former President Donald Trump. However, some analysts predict a small yet pivotal shift toward Trump and the GOP. More on this ahead of tonight's presidential debate from ILTV's editor, Maayan Hoffman.
Ahead of tonight's presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, a new poll from the Jewish Democratic Council of America shows Jewish voters leaning toward Harris. The poll indicates Harris leading Trump by 72% to 25% among Jewish voters, up from President Biden's 67% to 26% margin in April. Additionally, 75% of American Jews say they feel emotionally connected to Israel. However, issues like democracy, abortion rights, and the economy rank higher in importance than Israel for most Jewish voters. A Pew Research Center survey from April showed that 69% of Jewish voters lean toward the Democratic Party, while 29% support the Republicans. However, GOP strategists and those working on Jewish outreach are optimistic that internal Democratic disagreements over Israel could sway a small but crucial number of Jewish voters toward the Republican side in key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona. The debate will be held in Philadelphia, hosted by ABC News. National polls show a tight race between Trump and Harris, though Trump holds a slight lead in key swing states. Overall, national and battleground polls suggest the race is too close to call, with both candidates separated by only a few percentage points. Polls in 2016 and 2020 underestimated Trump's support, including by the Jewish community. Polls show Israelis overwhelmingly prefer Trump over Harris. A recent survey shows Trump leading Harris 64% to 28% among Israelis, with 93% of young Israelis backing Trump. The ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict is expected to play a role in both the debate and the upcoming election. Analysts suggest that for the first time, the Jewish American vote could potentially sway the final results.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, hot and humid weather is expected alongside partly cloudy skies and temperatures at highs of 34 degrees Celsius or 94 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.